Welcome to Shadow Case Files, where a single symbol turned fear into a game, and the truth vanished into the dark. Tonight, we open a file that was never meant to be solved and ask the question no one has been able to answer. The first shot echoed through the night like a crack in reality. It was just before midnight on a cold December evening in 1968. The air was still, the sky black and empty, and a quiet gravel road outside a small California town seemed like the safest place in the world. A teenage couple sat inside a parked car, talking about ordinary things: school, friends, the future. Nothing felt dangerous, nothing felt wrong. Then headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. At first, it seemed like another car passing through, but the vehicle slowed and stopped behind them. The engine idled, the lights stayed on. Minutes stretched in silence. A man stepped out. He moved without urgency, no shouting, no warning, just the sound of gravel crunching beneath his shoes as he approached the car. The couple barely had time to react before the first bullet tore through the window. Glass exploded inward, the night filled with gunfire. When it was over, the attacker walked back to his car and disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind confusion, blood, and a question that would haunt investigators for decades. Why? There was no robbery, no argument, no known connection. The victims were random, ordinary teenagers in the wrong place at the wrong time. Police searched for clues. They found shell casings. They examined tire tracks, but there were no fingerprints, no witnesses, no clear suspect. It felt like violence without motive, a crime committed simply because someone wanted to pull the trigger. Then, months later, it happened again. Another young couple, another quiet lover's lane, another sudden burst of gunfire in the dark. But this time, something changed. Shortly after the attack, the local police department phone rang. The caller spoke calmly, almost politely. He gave directions to the crime scene. He described the victims and the weapon he used. His voice was steady, not rushed, not nervous. And before hanging up, he added something chilling. "I also killed those kids last year." With that single sentence, two separate attacks became the work of one calculating mind. This was no random outburst, it was a pattern. But who was he? A jealous lover? A drifter? A man hiding in sight? The police didn't know it yet, but the voice on that phone was only beginning to speak, and soon the entire country would be forced to listen. The envelope looked ordinary. It sat quietly on the editor's desk, mixed in with bills, advertisements, and reader complaints. But inside was something that would shake an entire state. The letter began with a confession. It claimed responsibility for the recent shootings. It described details only the killer could know: the position of the bodies, the brand of ammunition, the final moments before the gunfire. And at the bottom of the page, there was a strange symbol, a circle with a cross drawn through it. Within hours, two other newspapers received nearly identical letters. Each one included a piece of a coded message, strange symbols arranged in careful rows. The writer demanded that all three newspapers print his cipher on the front page. If they refused, he promised to kill again. The threat was clear. He did not just want to murder, he wanted to be heard. The newspapers made a difficult choice. They published the code. Across California, families stared at the strange symbols printed in black ink. Radio hosts discussed them. Teachers tried to solve them after school. Even ordinary couples sat at their kitchen tables, drawing the symbols onto paper, hoping to unlock the secret. Days later, a school teacher and his wife managed to break part of the cipher. The message was disturbing. The writer claimed that killing was thrilling. He said it was more exciting than hunting animals. He wrote that his victims would serve him in the afterlife. There was no apology, no regret, only pleasure. The fear shifted that week. Before, people were afraid of a hidden gunman in the dark. Now, they were afraid of a mind that enjoyed the chaos. Then, as if to prove he was still in control, the killer struck again. This time, it was not a shooting in the shadows. A young couple was attacked near a quiet lake in broad daylight. The man who approached them was wearing a black hood. On his chest was the same crossed circle symbol from the letters. He tied them up. He spoke calmly, and before leaving, he wrote a message on their car door, listing the dates of his earlier crimes. It was a signature. He wasn't just committing murder, he was building an identity. And as the symbol began appearing in newspapers across the country, one terrifying truth became clear. The killer wasn't hiding from the spotlight, he was stepping directly into it. But if he wanted the world to know his symbol, what would he do next to make sure they never forgot it? The city lights were still glowing when the gunshot rang out. It was October 1969 in San Francisco. The streets were alive with late-night traffic, neon signs, and the hum of a restless city. A taxi driver had just picked up a passenger in a quiet neighborhood. It was supposed to be another routine fare, a short ride, a few dollars, and then home. Instead, it became something far darker. When the cab stopped at the corner of a residential street, the passenger leaned forward. A single shot was fired into the driver's head. The sound was sharp but brief, swallowed by the city noise. The killer stepped out of the cab calmly, as if nothing unusual had happened. But this time, there were witnesses. Teenagers watching from a nearby window saw a man wiping down the inside of the taxi with a cloth. He moved carefully, methodically, removing fingerprints. Then he walked away under the streetlights, disappearing between houses. Police arrived quickly. The neighborhood was sealed off. Patrol cars searched the streets. And then something almost unbelievable happened. Two officers spotted a man walking just a few blocks from the scene. He matched the general description. White male, glasses, average build. They stopped him and asked basic questions. He remained calm, polite, unthreatening. But due to a mistake in the police radio broadcast, the suspect description had been incorrectly given as a different race. The officers were looking for someone else. So they let him go. Minutes later, the truth about the suspect description was corrected. By then, the man was gone. Days passed before another letter arrived at a local newspaper. Inside was a piece of the murdered taxi driver's shirt, cut away as proof. The writer mocked the police. He claimed they had stopped him and allowed him to walk free. It was more than a confession. It was humiliation. He wanted the public to know how close law enforcement had come and how easily he had slipped away. Then came the threat that changed everything. In another letter, he claimed he would start targeting school buses. He described shooting out the tires and picking off children as they ran. Whether he truly intended to do it didn't matter. Fear spread instantly. Police cars began escorting buses. Parents watched strangers with suspicion. The city felt tense, exposed. The killer had moved from quiet country roads to the heart of a major city. He had proven he could strike anywhere. and if he had truly walked past police officers without fear, just how confident had he become? The letters did not stop. Even when the shooting slowed, the envelopes kept arriving, each one carrying the same chilling symbol, each one reopening wounds that had barely begun to close. Detectives would unfold the pages carefully, unsure whether they were holding a confession, a threat, or a lie. Some letters included new ciphers, rows of strange symbols that looked almost playful at first glance. Others described bombs hidden in public places. The writer claimed he had buried explosives beneath busy streets, complete with detailed diagrams. Police searched, digging into dirt and tearing up pavement. They found nothing. Was he bluffing, or was he simply enjoying watching authorities scramble? The investigation grew larger and more complicated. Tips flooded in from across the country. Every suspicious neighbor, every quiet loner, every man who wore glasses and kept to himself became a possible suspect. Detectives built files inches thick. Walls were covered with photos, maps, timelines. One man quickly drew attention. He lived near some of the crime scenes. He had a history of disturbing behavior. Friends said he made strange comments about violence. His physical appearance matched witness sketches in unsettling ways. Investigators questioned him, searched his home, studied his handwriting, but nothing was solid. No fingerprints matched, no direct evidence tied him to the murders. Another suspect emerged years later. This one had a different background, a different personality. Handwriting experts debated whether his writing resembled the Zodiac's letters. Some believed it was a match, others strongly disagreed. The uncertainty only deepened the mystery. The killer seemed to understand how investigations worked. He mixed real details with false claims. He took credit for crimes police could not confirm. He sent confusing messages that forced detectives to chase shadows. It was as if he wanted to create multiple versions of himself, different personalities hidden behind one symbol. A killer, a prankster, a mastermind, a liar. And then, slowly, the letters began to fade. Fewer envelopes arrived. The threats became less frequent. Investigators waited for the next message, the next clue, the next mistake. But silence settled in. No farewell, no final confession, just an empty mailbox. Had he grown tired of the game? Had he been arrested for another crime under a different name? Or had he simply decided he had proven his point? The man with the symbol had vanished into the crowd, and without the letters, who was left to chase? The case file never closed. Years passed. The headlines faded. New crimes filled the news. But inside evidence rooms and dusty archives, boxes marked with a single symbol remained untouched, waiting. The killer had stopped writing. He had stopped calling. Yet his absence felt louder than his threats ever did. Detectives retired, handing the mystery to younger investigators who grew up hearing the name whispered like a ghost story. They reopened envelopes sealed decades earlier. They studied fingerprints under stronger microscopes. They searched for DNA on stamps and paper, hoping the smallest trace might still be hiding. Technology had changed, the world had changed, but the question had not. Who was he? Over time, amateur code breakers and online communities joined the hunt. Old ciphers were scanned and shared across the internet. Every few years, someone claimed they had solved the puzzle. Most were wrong. But in 2020, a team of independent code experts cracked one of the long unsolved messages. The breakthrough made headlines around the world. People waited, expecting a name to finally emerge. But the decoded message revealed no identity. It contained taunts, twisted thoughts, and more of the same cold arrogance. Even decades later, he was still playing games. Meanwhile, the list of suspects continued to grow and shrink. Some died before they could be cleared. Others were investigated deeply, only for the evidence to fall apart under scrutiny. DNA tests ruled certain men out, but they never clearly ruled anyone in. The possibility grew darker with time. What if he had lived an ordinary life? A neighbor who smiled politely, a coworker who never stood out, a man who watched news reports about himself while sitting in his living room. Did he feel pride, relief, or fear that one day a knock on the door would end everything? The most unsettling truth is not that the Zodiac Killer murdered and disappeared. It's that he may have blended back into society so completely that no one noticed. The symbol he created still lingers in books, documentaries, and police files. It has become part of American criminal history, not because we know who he was, but because we don't. And somewhere, locked inside evidence that has yet to speak, or buried with a man whose secret died with him, lies the final answer. The silence remains. But is it hiding a mistake that has simply not been found yet? If this story kept you thinking, don't let it end here. Like, subscribe, share, and press the bell icon so you never miss the next mystery.